Let's look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah!
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now, the Detroit Lions shocked quite a few people this year by going 9-8. They finished with a winning record for the first time since 2017 and finished the NFL season as one of the hottest teams in the NFL at an 8-2 record. Now, the Lions, coming off back-to-back very good drafts and off-seasons, are expected to go into this next year as potential competitors for the NFC North, and if running back Jamal Williams has anything to say about it, they're going to take the North pretty handedly. And with that being said, we're going to talk about that comment from running back Jamal Williams. We're going to talk about why the Lions could very well take the North next year, why they should even potentially be favored to take the NFC North next year and get in a position to host a playoff game as a top 4 seed in the conference. So with that being said, let's get right on into taking a look at the Detroit Lions roster, what they did last year, and why they should be kings of the North this time next season. Now, the Detroit Lions haven't won the NFC North since the 1991 season. That is also the last time the Detroit Lions won a playoff game, beating Emmitt Smith's Cowboys in the divisional round. It's been a long time since the Lions have hosted a playoff game, and they've actually never hosted a playoff game at Ford Field. But that could very well change this offseason, as a lot of the Lions players and a lot of the Lions coaching staff have a ton of confidence going into next year, as they should. They absolutely overachieved this year at a 9-8 record. They played better than I think the on-paper talent would have you believe. They outcoached what a lot of people thought their expectations were for the Detroit Lions, and they are returning some of the best coaching staffs in the NFC North. But we'll get to that in a minute. Taking a look at the Detroit Lions right now, they have a 9-8 record. They were half a game out of the playoffs, and they were, I think, the best team in the division at the very end of the season. So going into next year, knowing that Brad Holmes can draft, knowing that the Lions can build through the offseason and fill the last couple holes on their roster, why shouldn't the Detroit Lions be favored or at least expected to compete for the NFC North? Well, looking at the quarterback position, the Lions have the best quarterback position in the entire NFC North. Jared Goff last year is coming off of a Pro Bowl season where he threw for over 4,400 yards, 29 touchdowns to just 7 interceptions. He, as a passer, is statistically better than Josh Allen was a season ago, and that was in his first season with Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator, as well as multiple weapons like DJ Chark, as well as Jameson Williams. Ben Johnson and Jared Goff have proved they are, I think, the best OC quarterback duo in the entire North last year. Jared Goff saw career-high production. Ben Johnson was offered multiple head coaching positions and turned them down to come back to Detroit. So taking a look at a lot of the times in divisions, the best quarterback wins the conference more often than not. We've seen it for decades with Aaron Rodgers. Last year, I think Kirk Cousins has a case for being the best quarterback in the North statistically, and the Vikings won. Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the AFC West. They win that division constantly, right? You look at Joe Burrow and the Bengals, best quarterback, division winner. If you go through every single division, the best quarterback more times than not wins the division outright and hosts a playoff game. The Lions are going into next season with a 29-year-old Jared Goff coming off one of his best seasons of his career, who's only getting better, only growing in confidence, and only looking better by the week with second-year offensive coordinator Ben Johnson now. And he's going to go into next season having more chemistry with Jameson Williams this offseason, having more chemistry with his tight end weapons, who basically replaced the guy he trained with all offseason in TJ Hawkinson middle of the year. So Jared Goff is going to go in with more confidence, with a second-year offensive coordinator having worked with him, as well as having more connection with potentially his number one receiving option, as well as multiple tight end safety blankets, as we know Jared Goff likes to use them. Speaking of Ben Johnson, the Lions also have the best coaching staff in the NFC North. And I'm not just talking about head coach. I'm talking about top to bottom. The Lions coaching staff is some of the best in the NFC North, right? I think Dan Campbell achieved the absolute most with the absolute least last season. I think on paper, the Packers were a better team. I think on paper, the Minnesota Vikings were a better football team. And yet Brad Holmes went 5-1, or Dan Campbell went 5-1 in the division, beat the Vikings very handedly the second time, and swept the Green Bay Packers, as well as potentially the Detroit Lions having 3 head coaching candidates, as of right now that we know of, on the roster at the same time. Obviously, Dan Campbell, Ben Johnson, who was favored for multiple head coaching positions before deciding to return to Detroit, as well as Aaron Glenn, who is still currently up in the air for the potential coaching opportunity at the Indianapolis Colts. They have 3 head coaches on their roster as of right now, with one of the best young minds in the NFL in Ben Johnson, a great defensive coordinator and game planner in Aaron Glenn, as well as one of the best motivating coaches and one of the best players coaches in the entire NFL in Dan Campbell. Not to mention they have one of the best offensive line coaches. They have a good receivers coach. They have a good quarterbacks coach. They have a really, really good linebackers coach and a solid defensive lineman coach. Every single coaching position, top to bottom, that has at least proven themselves with the Detroit Lions so far, because I won't speak to the new coaches that were just added to the roster yet, are some of the best coaches at their position, from head coach to coordinators. The 3 coordinators are very good at their jobs. And then the positional coaches, a great O-line coach, a great linebackers coach, a great defensive lines coach. They have a phenomenal coaching staff. And I think that, if you want to say Matt LaFleur is the best coach, that's fine. He has the most wins. He has the most playoff success, whatever the case may be. But at this moment in time, the Lions have the best coaching staff going into next year out of the entirety of the NFC North. So you pair the best coaching staff with the best quarterback, it seems pretty likely that that team should probably win the division, right? But I'll add one more on top. The Lions are the hottest team in the NFL, right? The Vikings got off to an incredibly hot start this season and finished a little bit sketchy, right? The Green Bay Packers are an older franchise with very little money left, and they're going to have to get rid of some free agents and potentially their franchise quarterback. The Lions, however, started the season really rough. Started at 1-6, but finished at 8-2, and only lost to the Buffalo Bills, who were a top seed in the AFC, as well as the Carolina Panthers, who went 6-6 and were a 500 scrappy football team down the stretch with their interim head coach. So they lost 2 games to 2 teams that were not bad, but they also blew out the playoff Giants. They also blew out the playoff caliber Jets, who didn't make the playoffs but were 7-7 at the time and started 7-4. They blew out the Minnesota Vikings. They blew out multiple playoff teams throughout that period and showed that they can absolutely compete with any team in the playoffs and any of the NFL juggernaut that people are talking about right now. So you have one of the youngest teams in the NFL on a hot streak that is growing and developing together, and they're only going to have another offseason to get better, right? You're going to have all of these rookies that shined last year are going to have another year to get better. So Hutchinson and Houston and Kirby and Rodriguez, and hopefully Jamal gets some chemistry, and of course, hopefully Josh Pascal is able to stay healthy. They're all getting better. The Lions have one of the youngest cores in the NFL, who just went 9-8, is the hottest team in the NFL at this point. I'd say them and Jacksonville were the 2 top teams to finish 8-2 and had the 2 best records through the final 10 weeks of the season. And they have the best coaching staff and the best quarterback in the conference. This team should win the NFC North. This team should win 10, 11, 12, even 13 games next season, and not only compete for a division, potentially compete for a 1 seed. That is how good this team can be, with Jared Goff and the coaching staff and the young core, with a really good offseason and a favorable schedule next year. The Lions can win the North. The Lions can compete for a Super Bowl next year, and I don't know the last time we've said that. Yes, the Lions have had winning records in the past, right? In the Jim Caldwell era, they had multiple 9-7, even an 11-5 season, but they never were able to compete with playoff teams. Dan Campbell's proven he can beat a playoff team. He beat the Giants. He beat the Vikings. He beat he beat a lot of playoff teams this season, or beat multiple playoff teams at the very least, and beat the AP Coach of the Year in Brian Daboll at MetLife. He beat the Minnesota Vikings by 12 points. He beat, Green Bay down the stretch to keep them out of the playoffs. They were certainly a playoff caliber team down at the end there. He has shown the ability to beat really good football teams as a head coach. And he has all these pieces around him to help get better and better and better. And you look at the Lions' schedule next season, they have a very favorable schedule at home, playing a lot of teams that are in the middle of a rebuild right now, including the Denver Broncos, who I don't think are necessarily going to be an easy out with Sean Payton, but certainly are not as good as the Detroit Lions right now, as well as the Vegas Raiders and a lot of other teams. The Carolina Panthers are at home. The Seattle Seahawks are at home. I think they are better than right now. They have a favorable schedule at home, and I think have a case that they might even go 8-0 at Ford Field next year. And then you travel away and you have a couple division games I think you should be expected to win. You have multiple away games that I think the Lions should be favored in next year. So as of right now, I know it's very early, not having the draft or free agency to look back on yet, but looking at this Lions team, where they're at right now, going into next season, knowing the schedule for next season, I think 11 and 12 wins is not that far out of the realm of possibility for this Lions. And if they go 11 and 10, or if they go 11 and 6, 12 and 5, they certainly will be in contention for a division title next year. So with all that being said, that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know down in the comments below, what do you think about this team? Where do you think their ceiling is? How far do you think they can go next season? And what are your expectations? I'd be very curious to you guys think. But with all that being said, that is all for you guys today. Thank you all so much for watching. And until next time, and as always, go Lions.